Princess Zara stood at the window of her diplomatic ship, watching the stars drift by in the endless black of space. Her purple skin gleamed under the soft lights of the luxury vessel, and her golden eyes reflected the distant suns. She was traveling to the neutral station of HFY Prime for peace talks between her people, the Kellians, and several other alien races. "Your Highness," called Captain Vex from behind her. "We will arrive in 6 hours." Zara nodded but did not turn around. She was thinking about the stories her father had told her about humans. Savage creatures who fought with no honor. Beasts who destroyed her cousin Prince Kale's fleet 3 years ago during the border wars. The human military had shown no mercy that day, killing hundreds of young Kellian soldiers. "I still do not understand why humans are invited to these talks," Zara said to her captain. "They bring only violence wherever they go." Captain Vex, an older Kellian with silver markings across his face, stepped closer. "The Council believes all races should have a voice in galactic peace, Princess. Even humans." Zara made a sound of disgust. "Peace with humans is impossible. They only understand war." Before Captain Vex could reply, the ship suddenly shook violently. Red lights began flashing throughout the cabin, and an alarm started blaring. "What is happening?" Zara demanded. Captain Vex was already moving toward the control panel. His face went pale as he read the display. "Pirates, Your Highness. 3 ships, coming fast." The diplomatic vessel shook again, harder this time. Zara grabbed onto a chair to keep from falling. Through the window, she could see dark ships firing energy weapons at them. "Get to the escape pods," Captain Vex ordered. "I will hold them off." But before Zara could move, the ship's hull was torn open by a massive blast. The lights went out, and emergency power kicked in with a dim red glow. She heard the sound of boots on metal floors and rough voices shouting in different languages. Space pirates had boarded their ship. Captain Vex drew his weapon and pushed Zara behind a console. "Stay hidden, Princess. Do not let them know who you are." The door to the main cabin exploded inward. Through the smoke came 6 figures in rough armor and breathing masks. They carried heavy weapons and moved with the confidence of experienced raiders. "Nobody move," shouted the leader in broken galactic standard. "This ship belongs to Captain Snick now." Captain Vex fired his weapon, but the pirates were ready. They returned fire immediately. Zara watched in horror as her loyal captain fell to the floor, his weapon sliding across the metal deck. "Search everything," the pirate leader commanded. "Take anything valuable. Round up survivors for the slave markets." Zara tried to stay hidden, but one of the pirates spotted her golden eyes glowing in the darkness. "Boss, got a live one here." Rough hands grabbed her arms and dragged her from behind the console. The pirate leader looked her up and down, noting her expensive clothes and jewelry. Well, he said with a cruel smile. "Looks like we caught ourselves some nobility. You will bring a fine price at the markets, pretty one." They forced metal restraints around Zara's wrists and ankles. The cold metal burned against her skin. She was pushed and shoved through the damaged corridors of her ship, past the bodies of her guards and crew members who had died trying to protect her. The pirates loaded her and 3 other survivors onto their ship. The vessel smelled of unwashed bodies, engine oil, and fear. They were thrown into a cargo hold that had been converted into a prison. Metal bars separated small cells, each barely large enough for 2 people. Zara found herself alone in a cell, still wearing her torn diplomatic robes. Across from her, she could see other prisoners from different ships the pirates had attacked. There were Kellians like herself, tall blue-skinned Andorians, and several races she did not recognize. And in the cell next to hers sat a human. The moment Zara saw him, hatred filled her heart. He was a large man with short brown hair and scars on his arms. He wore what looked like the remains of a military uniform. Even sitting in chains, he looked dangerous. This was exactly the kind of human who had killed her cousin and so many of her people. A soldier. A killer. The human noticed her staring and looked in her direction. "Are you hurt?" he asked in perfect galactic standard. Zara turned her face away and did not answer. She would not speak to this creature. She would not acknowledge his existence. "My name is Tom," the human continued. "I was captured 3 days ago when pirates hit my transport ship. I know you probably do not want to talk, but if you are injured, I might be able to help." Zara kept her back turned to him. How dare this human pretend to be concerned for her welfare? Humans only cared about violence and conquest. This was probably some kind of trick. Hours passed. The pirates brought a small amount of food and water to each cell. It was barely enough to keep them alive, but it was better than nothing. Zara ate in silence, trying to ignore the sounds from the other cells. She noticed that the human called Tom was sharing his food portions with an elderly Andorian in the cell across from him. The old alien looked weak and sick, barely able to lift his head. "Here, take this," Tom said quietly, passing pieces of his bread through the bars. "You need it more than I do." The Andorian tried to refuse, but Tom insisted. "I can go longer without food. Please, take it." Zara watched this exchange with confusion. Why would a human share his food? It had to be some kind of plan. Maybe he was trying to make the old alien trust him so he could use him later. The next day brought more of the same routine. The pirates barely fed them and gave them only enough water to survive. The ship traveled through hyperspace, heading toward whatever slave market would pay the most for their cargo. Zara noticed that Tom had torn strips from his uniform to make bandages. He was treating cuts and wounds on several prisoners, working quietly through the bars between cells. He asked for nothing in return and seemed to expect no thanks. When a young Kellyan child in another cell began crying for his mother, Tom started telling stories to distract him. Simple tales about brave heroes and magical creatures, told in a gentle voice that somehow made the dark prison feel less frightening. "The dragon was very big and very scary," Tom said to the child. But the little knight was clever. She did not try to fight the dragon with her sword. Instead, she offered to share her lunch with him. The Kellyan child stopped crying and listened with wide eyes. What happened next? Well, it turned out the dragon was not really mean at all. He was just hungry and lonely. After they shared the meal, they became the best of friends and went on many adventures together. Other prisoners began listening to Tom's stories too. Even some of the adults seemed comforted by his calm voice and simple tales of hope. Zara found herself listening as well, though she tried to pretend she was not interested. Despite herself, she was puzzled by this human's behavior. Everything she had been taught about humans said they were cruel and selfish. But this Tom person seemed to care about complete strangers. It had to be an act. Humans were good at deception. This was probably how they tricked their enemies before attacking them. On the third day, one of the pirates came to look over their prisoners. He was a tall, thin creature with green scales and yellow eyes. He pointed at different captives and made notes on a data pad. "This one will go to the mining colonies," he said, pointing at a strong-looking Andorian. "Hard labor will break him quickly." He moved on to the elderly Andorian that Tom had been sharing food with. "This old one is useless. We will space him before we reach the market. No point in feeding dead weight." The old Andorian began to shake with fear. Several prisoners started protesting, but the pirate just laughed. "Please," Tom called out. "He is still strong enough to work. I will train him for whatever job you need. Do not waste a potentially valuable asset." The pirate looked at Tom with interest. "You think you can make this old fool useful?" "Give me the chance, and I will prove it," Tom replied. "I have experience training soldiers. I can make any of these prisoners more valuable to buyers." Zara stared at Tom in shock. Was he really trying to save the old Andorian's life? Or was this part of some larger human plan? The pirate considered for a moment. Very well, human. You have 1 week to prove this old one's worth. If he cannot perform basic tasks by then, we space them both. After the pirate left, the elderly Andorian reached through the bars toward Tom. Thank you, young one. You did not have to risk yourself for me. Everyone deserves a chance, Tom replied simply. We will work together and get you ready. Over the following days, Zara watched Tom work with the old Andorian. He taught him exercises to build up his strength. He shared not just his food but also his water rations. He encouraged the elderly alien when he felt too weak to continue. I cannot do this, the Andorian said during one training session. My bones are too old, my muscles too weak. You are stronger than you think, Tom replied patiently. Let us try again, but slower this time. There is no rush. Zara found herself watching these training sessions more and more. She told herself it was just boredom, but part of her was genuinely curious about this strange human. When the Kellyan child became sick with fever, Tom gave up his own blanket to help keep the boy warm. He stayed awake through the night, telling quiet stories and making sure the child drank enough water. Why do you do this? Zara finally asked, the words coming out before she could stop them. Tom looked surprised that she had spoken to him. Do what? Help them. You gain nothing from it. You make yourself weaker by sharing your food and water. Tom was quiet for a moment, thinking about his answer. I suppose I help because that is what people should do for each other. We are all in the same terrible situation. We should support each other instead of making it worse. You are human, Zara said, her voice full of accusation. Humans only care about themselves. You destroyed my cousin's fleet. You killed hundreds of my people. I am sorry for your loss, Tom said quietly. War brings out the worst in everyone, no matter what species they are. I have lost friends too. Good people who did not deserve to die. Then why do you not hate us the way we hate you? Tom looked at her with sad eyes. Because hate only creates more hate. If I judge every Kellyan by the actions of your military, then I become just as blind as the people who judge all humans by the actions of our military. Zara did not know how to respond to that. She had never thought about it that way before. The next day, the pirates announced that they would reach the slave markets in 2 days. All prisoners would be sold to the highest bidders. Some would go to mining colonies, others to factory worlds, and the lucky ones might end up as servants to wealthy families. As Zara lay in her cell that night, she found herself thinking about Tom's words. Could it be possible that not all humans were the monsters she had been taught they were? Could this one soldier's kindness be real, and not just an elaborate trick? She looked across at Tom, who was quietly checking on the other prisoners as he did every night. Making sure everyone was as comfortable as possible in their terrible situation. For the first time since her capture, Princess Zara began to wonder if everything she believed about humans might be wrong. The morning of their second day heading to the slave market started like any other. The pirates brought their meager food rations and dirty water. Tom continued sharing his portions with the elderly Andorian, whose name was Beck. The old alien had grown stronger under Tom's patient training, but he was still weak from years of poor health. Zara watched Tom work with Beck on simple exercises. The human never showed frustration, even when the Andorian struggled with basic movements. Instead, Tom offered quiet encouragement and adjusted the training to match what Beck could handle. You are improving every day, Tom told Beck as the old alien managed to do 10 arm raises. Tomorrow you will be even stronger. Beck smiled, something Zara had not seen him do since their capture. You have given me hope, young Tom. I thought my life was over. Life is never over while we still breathe, Tom replied. There is always something we can do to help ourselves or others. Princess Zara turned away from the conversation. She was still struggling with her feelings about this human. Everything she had been taught said that humans were cruel and selfish. But Tom's actions did not match those teachings at all. Around midday, something changed. Zara felt a strange vibration in the ship's hull. The lights flickered for a moment, then returned to normal. Most prisoners did not seem to notice, but Tom's expression became serious. "Did you feel that?" he asked Beck quietly. "Feel what?" the old Andorian replied. "The ship's engines are running differently. The vibration pattern has changed." Tom stood up and pressed his ear against the metal wall of his cell. He listened carefully for several minutes, his face growing more concerned. "What is wrong?" asked the Kellyan child named Finn, who had recovered from his fever thanks to Tom's care. "I am not sure yet," Tom said. "But something is not right with this ship." 2 hours later, the lights went out completely. Emergency power kicked in with a dim red glow, just like when the pirates had first captured them. But this time, there were no sounds of fighting or explosions. Just an eerie silence. The temperature in the prison hold began to drop quickly. Within minutes, Zara could see her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. "The life support systems are failing," Tom announced to the other prisoners. "We need to stay warm and conserve oxygen." Some of the prisoners began to panic. A blue-skinned Andorian female started crying loudly. 2 Kellyan males began arguing about who was to blame for their situation. Fear spread through the cells like a virus. "Everyone please stay calm," Tom called out in a strong voice that somehow carried over the noise. "Panic will only make things worse. We need to work together." "Why should we listen to a human?" shouted one of the Kellyan males. "This is probably your fault somehow." Zara felt a flash of anger at the accusation, which surprised her. Why was she defending this human, even in her own thoughts? "Blaming each other will not fix the problem," Tom replied calmly. "I have engineering training from my military service. If we work together, we might be able to repair whatever is wrong." "You expect us to trust you," the same Kellyan demanded. "I expect you to trust your own desire to survive," Tom answered. "Right now, I am the only one here who knows how to fix life support systems. You can hate me after we solve this problem." The argument was interrupted by the arrival of 3 pirates. They looked worried and angry, which was not a good sign for the prisoners. "Listen up, cargo," the lead pirate snarled. "We have technical problems. Our engineer is dead, killed in a fight with another crew member. The backup systems are failing, and we cannot fix them ourselves." He pointed directly at Tom. "You, human. The ship's computer says you have military engineering experience. You will help us fix this problem. What do I get in return?" Tom asked. The pirate laughed harshly. "You get to live longer than a few hours. The life support will fail completely soon. Without repairs, we all die together. I want better conditions for all the prisoners while I work," Tom said. "More food, warmer blankets, and clean water. You are not in a position to make demands, slave." Tom shrugged. "Then we all die together, like you said. Your choice." The pirate stared at him for a long moment, clearly frustrated. Finally, he nodded grudgingly. "Fine. But if you try to escape or sabotage anything, I will kill 3 prisoners for every minute you waste." They unlocked Tom's cell and led him away. Before leaving, he turned back to address the other prisoners. "Share body heat to stay warm," he told them. "Take turns doing light exercises to keep your blood moving. I will be back as soon as I can." Hours passed with no word from Tom. The temperature continued dropping, and breathing became more difficult as oxygen levels fell. Zara found herself moving closer to the bars between her cell and Beck's, trying to share warmth with the elderly Andorian. "Do you think the human can really fix this?" Beck asked through chattering teeth. "I do not know," Zara replied honestly. "But he seems to know what he is talking about." Young Finn, the Kellyan child, was shivering violently in his cell. The other adult prisoners were too focused on their own survival to pay attention to him. Without thinking, Zara began talking to him, trying to distract him from the cold. "Tell me about your home world, Finn," she said gently. "It is warm there," the boy replied between shivers. "My mother grows fire flowers in our garden. They glow red and orange and make everything smell sweet. Fire flowers sound beautiful. What else is special about your home?" As they talked, Zara found herself thinking about Tom's kindness toward this same child. The human had shared his blanket and told stories to comfort Finn when he was sick. Now she was doing the same thing, and she understood why Tom had made that choice. After 6 hours, Tom returned with 2 pirates escorting him. He looked exhausted and was covered in grease and dirt from working on the ship's systems. "I fixed the immediate problem," he announced to the prisoners. "But the damage is worse than I thought. The main life support generator is dying. It will fail completely within 2 days." The lead pirate removed Tom's restraints so he could address the prisoners more easily. "The human says he can build a temporary replacement system, but it will require work outside the ship." "Outside?" Zara asked, not understanding. "Spacewalks," Tom explained. "Someone has to go outside the ship to install new components and reroute power systems. It is extremely dangerous work, especially with damaged equipment. So we will force one of you prisoners to do it," the pirate added with a cruel smile. "If they die in the process, at least we tried." "No," Tom said firmly. "I will do it myself." Everyone stared at him in shock. Even the pirates seemed surprised by this offer. "Why would you volunteer for a suicide mission?" the lead pirate asked suspiciously. "Because I am the only one here who knows how to do the work properly," Tom replied. "If you send someone else, they will definitely die and the repairs will fail. Then we all die anyway." "Tom, you cannot do this," Beck protested from his cell. "The risk is too great." "The risk of doing nothing is greater," Tom answered. "Besides, I have done spacewalks before. I know the procedures." Zara found herself speaking before she realized it. There must be another way. Something safer. Tom looked at her with surprise. It was the first time she had shown any concern for his welfare. "I wish there were, but there is not enough time to find alternatives. The work has to be done now, before the remaining systems fail completely." The pirates took Tom away to prepare for the spacewalk. They gave him a damaged environmental suit that looked like it had been repaired many times. The helmet was cracked and sealed with metal patches. The oxygen tank was small and probably held only enough air for a few hours of work. Through a small window in the prison hold, Zara could see Tom floating outside the ship. He moved carefully along the hull, carrying tools and replacement parts. The work looked incredibly difficult and dangerous. One mistake, one equipment failure, and he would drift away into the endless darkness of space. For 3 hours, Tom worked outside the ship. The other prisoners watched through the window, many of them holding their breath every time he had to stretch across a particularly dangerous gap. "Why is he doing this for us?" asked one of the Andorian prisoners. "He barely knows any of us." "Because that is who he is," Beck answered quietly. "He helps people, even when it costs him everything." Finally, Tom completed his work and returned to the ship. Within minutes, the life support systems came back online. The temperature began to rise, and fresh oxygen started flowing through the ventilation system. But when the pirates brought Tom back to the prison hold, he was barely conscious. The damaged environmental suit had leaked, and he had been breathing recycled air for the last hour of his work outside. They threw him roughly into his cell and left without providing any medical attention. Tom lay on the cold floor, struggling to breathe normally after his ordeal. "Tom, can you hear me?" Beck called out in worry. "I am fine," Tom managed to say, though his voice was weak. "Just need to rest." Over the next few hours, Tom slowly recovered from his dangerous mission. But Zara noticed that he gave most of his food and water rations to the other prisoners, claiming he was not hungry. She realized he was still putting everyone else's needs before his own, even after risking his life to save them all. That evening, the pirates made another announcement that chilled everyone's blood. "We have decided to reduce our cargo before reaching the market," the lead pirate declared. "The weak and useless prisoners will be spaced to save resources. We have buyers who only want strong workers anyway." They began pointing at prisoners they considered worthless. The elderly Andorian Beck was first on their list, despite Tom's efforts to train him. 2 injured Kellians were next. Then they pointed at young Finn. "This child is too small for heavy labor," the pirate said. "He will just eat food without earning profit." "Wait," Tom said, struggling to stand up in his cell. "I can train them all to be valuable workers. Give me more time." "We gave you time with the old one, and he is still weak," the pirate replied. "No more delays. They will be spaced within the hour." "Then take me instead," Tom said firmly. "I am the one who failed to train them properly. The fault is mine." The pirate laughed. "You are too valuable to waste, human. Your engineering skills will bring a high price at the market." Zara watched this exchange with growing shock. Tom was willing to die in place of prisoners he had known for less than a week. He was ready to sacrifice himself for an elderly alien, 2 wounded Kellians, and a child who was not even his own species. As she looked at Tom standing bravely in his cell, ready to give his life for strangers, Princess Zara finally understood something that changed everything she had believed about humans. This was not an act or a trick. This was not part of some clever plan to gain advantage. Tom's kindness was real, his sacrifice genuine. He was willing to die for others simply because it was the right thing to do. For the first time in her life, Zara began to wonder if the stories about human cruelty were wrong. Maybe there were humans who chose compassion over conquest. Maybe not all of her people's enemies were truly evil. Maybe this one human soldier was about to teach her the most important lesson of her life. The pirates had given their prisoners 1 hour before they would space the elderly Beck, the 2 injured Kellians, young Finn, and anyone else they considered useless. The prison hold felt heavy with despair as everyone waited for what seemed like certain death. Zara watched Tom in his cell. He was not panicking like some of the other prisoners. Instead, he was working quietly on something she could not see clearly. His hands moved with purpose, manipulating small pieces of metal and wire. "What are you doing?" she finally asked him. Tom looked up at her, and for the first time since they had been captured, his eyes held a spark of hope. "Something I should have told everyone about days ago." He held up a small device made from scavenged parts. It looked like a combination of wires, metal pieces, and components torn from the ship's systems. "I have been working on this since my second day here," Tom explained quietly. "Every time they took me out to do repairs, I gathered parts and tools. This is a short-range communication device." Beck stared at him in amazement. "You mean we can call for help?" "Not exactly," Tom replied. "The range is very limited, and it can only send a basic distress signal. But if there are any ships nearby, they might pick it up." The injured Kellian male who had argued with Tom earlier crawled closer to the bars of his cell. "Why did you not use this before now?" "Because I was not finished building it until today," Tom said. "And because using it will alert the pirates to what I have been doing. Once I activate this, they will know someone has been sabotaging their systems." "Sabotaging?" Zara asked, confused. Tom smiled grimly. "Did you think their life support system really broke down by accident? I have been causing small system failures throughout the ship for days. Nothing dangerous enough to kill us all, but enough to slow them down and make them take longer to reach the slave markets." The other prisoners stared at him in shock. All this time, Tom had been working on a plan to help them escape. But he had kept it secret to protect them in case the pirates discovered what he was doing. "You could have escaped days ago when they let you work on the ship," Zara realized. You had access to tools, weapons, communication systems. I could have tried, Tom agreed. But I would not have gotten far, and the pirates would have taken their anger out on the rest of you. This way, everyone has a chance. Young Finn pressed his face against the bars of his cell. Will the signal really work? I do not know, Tom admitted honestly. But it is our only hope right now. The sound of heavy boots on metal floors announced the return of the pirates. They were coming to collect the prisoners marked for spacing. Time was running out. I have to activate the signal now, Tom said urgently. Everyone get ready. If this works, things are going to happen very fast. He pressed a button on his makeshift device. A small light began blinking, sending out the distress signal into the darkness of space. Now all they could do was wait and hope someone would hear their call for help. The pirates entered the prison hold with weapons ready and restraints in hand. The lead pirate pointed at Beck first. You, old one. Time to take a walk in space. As they unlocked Beck's cell, Tom spoke up loudly. Wait. Before you space anyone, there is something you should know. Shut up, human. You had your chance to train these worthless prisoners. I am not talking about training, Tom said. I am talking about the communication signal that is being broadcast from this ship right now. The lead pirate froze. What signal? Tom held up his device for everyone to see. I have been sending a distress call for the last few minutes. Any ships in this area will know exactly where to find us. The pirate's face turned dark with rage. You sabotaged our ship. You have been the one causing all our system problems. Guilty as charged, Tom replied calmly. The pirate raised his weapon toward Tom, but before he could fire, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed, and a voice spoke over the communication system. Unknown vessel, this is the Kellyan Royal Fleet. We have received your distress signal. Shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Princess Zara felt her heart jump with hope. The Royal Fleet was her father's navy. They had come to rescue the prisoners. But the pirates were not ready to surrender. The lead pirate grabbed his communicator and barked orders to his crew. Battle stations. Prepare to fight. He turned back to the prisoners with fury in his eyes. If we are going down, we are taking all of you with us. The pirate aimed his plasma rifle directly at Princess Zara. She was clearly the most valuable prisoner, and killing her would be the perfect revenge against their rescuers. This is for ruining our operation, Princess, the pirate snarled. Time seemed to slow as the pirate's finger tightened on the trigger. Zara saw the deadly energy building in the weapon's barrel. She knew she was about to die. But suddenly Tom was there, somehow having broken out of his locked cell. He threw himself between Zara and the pirate just as the weapon fired. The plasma bolt hit Tom in the chest with devastating force. He cried out in pain and collapsed to the floor, his body smoking from the terrible wound. But his sacrifice had saved Zara's life. The other pirates were distracted by the battle raging above them as the Royal Fleet attacked their ship. In the confusion, Tom managed to press something into Zara's hand before losing consciousness. It was a small device he had stolen from the pirates during his repair work. A communication unit that could contact the Royal Fleet directly. Use this, Tom whispered weakly. Tell them where to find you. Zara activated the device with shaking hands. This is Princess Zara of the Kellyan Empire. I am being held prisoner in the cargo hold. There are multiple civilians here who need immediate medical attention. Within minutes, the sounds of battle stopped. The pirate ship's engines went silent, and the emergency lighting switched to normal power. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors, but these were organized and purposeful, not chaotic like pirate movements. The door to the prison hold burst open, and Kellyan royal guards poured in with weapons ready. They wore the golden armor that Zara had grown up seeing around the palace, and their leader bore the insignia of Captain Commander. Princess Zara, the commander called out when he spotted her. "Thank the stars you are alive." "Help the injured first," Zara commanded, pointing to Tom. "This human saved my life. He needs medical attention immediately." The guards looked surprised at her concern for a human, but they followed orders without question. A medical team rushed in with emergency equipment and began treating Tom's plasma wound. "Will he survive?" Zara asked the lead medic anxiously. "The wound is serious but not fatal," the medic replied. "We can stabilize him for transport to our medical facilities." As the rescue team freed the prisoners and provided medical care, Zara knelt beside Tom's stretcher. He was conscious but very weak. "Why?" she asked him softly. "Why did you take that blast for me? I treated you terribly from the moment we met. I believed you were my enemy." Tom managed a small smile despite his pain. "Because you are not my enemy, Princess. You are someone who was taught to fear and hate people like me, just like I was taught to fear and hate people like you." "But the border wars," Zara said. "My cousin Prince Kale was killed by human forces. Hundreds of my people died. And hundreds of my people died too," Tom replied gently. "Good soldiers on both sides, following orders from leaders who could not find a way to make peace. But that does not make you responsible for their deaths, any more than it makes me responsible for your cousin's death." Zara felt tears forming in her golden eyes. "I was so wrong about you. About humans." "You were not wrong about all humans," Tom corrected. "There are humans who are exactly as cruel and violent as you were taught. Just like there are Kellians who are cruel and violent. But there are also humans who choose to be kind, just like there are Kellians who choose to be kind. How can you forgive me for the way I treated you?" Tom's smile grew a little stronger. "There is nothing to forgive. You protected yourself the only way you knew how. But now you know there is another way." The medical team prepared to transport Tom to the Royal Fleet's hospital ship. Before they took him away, he gestured for Zara to come closer. "Princess," he whispered. "When you return home, remember what you learned here. Not all humans are enemies. Not all conflicts have to end in war. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is choose to trust instead of fight." As they carried Tom away for medical treatment, Zara stood in the rescued prison hold surrounded by the other freed prisoners. Beck, young Finn, and the injured Kellians were all alive because of Tom's courage and sacrifice. Captain Commander Wren approached her respectfully. "Princess, your father will be relieved to know you are safe. The Royal Council has been searching for you since your diplomatic ship was attacked." "Commander," Zara said firmly. "I want you to ensure the human Tom receives the highest level of medical care available. I also want him awarded the Star of Valor for his actions during our captivity." "Your Highness, he is human," the commander said uncertainly. "Such honors are typically reserved for our own people." "He risked his life repeatedly to save Kellian prisoners," Zara replied. "He took a plasma bolt meant for me. If that does not earn our highest honors, then our honors mean nothing." 3 weeks later, Princess Zara stood in the royal palace's great hall before the assembled Kellian council. Tom was there too, still recovering from his injuries but well enough to attend the ceremony. "The border conflicts between our peoples have caused great pain on both sides," Zara addressed the council. "But they have also shown us that we are not so different. We both value courage, sacrifice, and protecting those who cannot protect themselves." She turned to Tom, who stood at attention despite his injuries. This human soldier could have escaped alone and saved only himself. Instead, he chose to risk everything to save strangers of a species he had every reason to hate. His actions prove that peace between our peoples is not just possible, but necessary. King Vel, Zara's father, stood to address the assembly. "Based on my daughter's testimony and the evidence of his heroic actions, I hereby award Tom of Earth the Star of Valor and name him an honorary friend of the Kellian Empire." The ceremony was broadcast across both Kellian and human space. In the weeks that followed, it became a symbol of hope for peace between the two species. Tom eventually returned to his home world, but he and Zara maintained regular communication. Their friendship became the foundation for new diplomatic efforts between humans and Kellians. And whenever Princess Zara met with human representatives, she remembered the lesson Tom had taught her in that dark prison hold. The greatest strength any species could have was not the power to destroy their enemies, but the wisdom to turn enemies into friends. The border wars finally ended not with victory or defeat, but with understanding. And it all began with one soldier's choice to share his food with a hungry stranger, proving that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the course of history.